Grease wasn't just another musical when it debuted in cinemas in 1978. It was a storm of culture. With Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta at the forefront, the film was a box office success, grossing close to $400 million worldwide. The dazzling dance routines, engaging songs, and high school drama encased in nostalgia for the 1950s were all adored by the audience. However, despite its fame and prosperity, Grease had its share of issues. It was too audacious for its period, according to several critics, using sequences that provoked discussion and stretched limits. Come along with us as we rewatch the movie and discover why so many people argue over whether Grease was a really avant-garde production or just enjoyable entertainment. The beginning of a phenomena in culture. Grease wasn't just another musical when it debuted in 1978. It marked a sea change in popular culture. It was based on the 1972 Broadway musical by Jim Jacobs and Warren Casey and was directed by Randall Kleiser in his first feature picture. The plot centered on Olivia Newton-John's character Sandy Olsen, a charming Australian transfer student, and John Travolta's character Danny Zuko, a greaser. Once school started, their vacation romance was put to the test and turned into a blend of comedy, adolescent drama, and catchy music. The American premiere of the movie swiftly became a festivity. The word quickly spread, and people flocked to the theaters. The fact that it became one of the year's most talked about films demonstrated that it had captured more than simply the essence of the 1950s. It had produced a timeless energy of its own. The excitement was only increased by the soundtrack. On radios, in homes, and during school dances, songs like You're the One That I Want and Hopelessly Devoted to You were played. Even the Academy Awards nominated Olivia Newton-John's ballad, demonstrating that the movie was respected by the industry in addition to being well-liked. Numerous Golden Globe nominations, including Best Motion Picture in the Musical or Comedy category, quickly followed. Grease was recognized as culturally, historically, or aesthetically important by the Library of Congress in 2020. Its place in history was cemented at that moment. However, this achievement did not imply that the path was easy. Later, prequels, reboots, and sequels would attempt to recreate the same enchantment. Maxwell Caulfield and Michelle Pfeiffer starred in Grease 2, which came out in the early 1980s but didn't quite achieve the same success. Another prequel movie is now in development, and a TV show called Grease Rise of the Pink Ladies attempted to re-enter the Rydell High universe more recently. All of these attempts just serve to highlight how deeply ingrained the passion for Grease remains. But even if the movie became a cultural icon, the cast was what really made those vibrant characters come to life. A generation's defining cast. It would be impossible to discuss Grease without praising the ensemble. John Travolta played the charming and swaggering greaser Danny Zuko, who wore a sleek leather jacket. Olivia Newton-John as Sandy, the timid but resilient newcomer whose metamorphosis at the end of the movie astounded viewers and left her in their memories. The Pink Ladies and T-Birds followed. The vitality of the high school was defined by two groups. Kaniki, Danny's faithful right-hand guy, was portrayed by Jeff Conaway. Barry Pearl, Michael Tucci, and Kelly Ward, who played Duty, Sonny, and Pootsy, respectively, provided comic relief and individuality to the role. In contrast, the Pink Ladies dominated every scene in which they appeared. The group had an advantage thanks to Stockard Channing's performance of Betty Rizzo, which combined tenderness and toughness. As the charming and rambunctious Frenchie, Dee Conn enchanted viewers. The ensemble had the ideal mix of elegance, fun, and mischief thanks to the distinct personalities of Dinah Manoff's Marty and Jamie Donnelly's January. Every individual seemed authentic, as if viewers could identify a similar person at their own school. However, the film was influenced by more than just the actors. The plot deviated from its stage origins because of the imaginative choices made by director Randall Kleiser. As a reflection of Kleiser's own adolescent years in Philadelphia, the film leaned into a more bucolic, dreamy high school atmosphere rather than the gritty Chicago backdrop of the stage show. This maintained the rebellious spirit while also giving Grease a softer, almost nostalgic air. One of the stage musical's original authors, Warren Casey, had little influence over the movie's production. Barry Gibb of the Bee Gees was invited to fill in at the last minute after his theme song selection was turned down. It turned out to be a smart choice because the new theme ended up becoming one of the movie's hallmark songs. These adjustments demonstrated the film's risk-taking. Although they were not universally accepted, the outcomes were indisputable. Nevertheless, the movie's true success was demonstrated when cinemas were packed and it became a box office mainstay. A relentless box office success. Moviegoers flocked to theaters when Grease debuted. When it was launched in the middle of summer, cinemas were crowded with admirers who came back time and time again to enjoy the dance sequences and songs. It broke records for musicals that lasted for decades and was the largest movie of the year by the end of its run. The response in the UK was equally overwhelming. The film became a worldwide sensation because of its enthusiasm, humor, and catchy score, which appealed to audiences of many backgrounds. The fact that Grease was a sustained success was what set it apart. It kept going back to the cinemas. Audiences returned for more when it was republished in the late 1970s. Once again, fans packed the theaters for the 20th anniversary re-release in the late 1990s. In 2018, the movie returned to the big screen to celebrate its 40th anniversary, reminding everyone of its enchantment. Following Olivia Newton-John's death in 2022, Grease was re-released in theaters as a memorial. Viewers did more than simply watch the film. They dressed up, sung along, and honored Sandy and Danny's memory. The fans' commitment was more important than the figures, which made headlines. Grease was still able to attract audiences decades after it was first released. In Hollywood, that doesn't happen very often. The plot of many movies tends to wane after their box office run, but Grease defied this trend. It endured because of its characters, music, and the feelings it evoked in viewers. Despite all of the happiness and nostalgia it brought, there was always more to the discussion. While some thought the movie was too bold for its day, others thought it was just light-hearted fun. Early praise and mixed reviews. Grease was regarded by many as one of the greatest movies of 1978 when it was initially released. But not all of the critics were in agreement. The film now has a score of largely positive ratings on review websites. However, the reactions at the time were not all the same. While some critiques were scathing, others praised it. Among the optimistic voices was Vincent Canby of the New York Times. He said the movie was a lot of fun and that it was bigger, funnier, wittier, and more creative than a Hollywood production with a unique life. He went so far as to imply that Grease was a multi-million-dollar evocation of classic teen musicals, such as Don't Knock the Rock, 1956, and Beach Party, 1963. Another reputable critic, Gene Siskel, rated it 3 stars out of 4. Although he acknowledged that the movie was only thrilling when John Travolta was in it, he nevertheless suggested it to audiences. For of its musical pieces, he claimed, are true showstoppers deserving of praise. The acclaim was further enhanced by the magazine Variety, which praised the fresh and renewed song as well as the lively choreography. Although not everyone was applauding, they felt that Travolta and Olivia Newton-John performed incredibly well together. According to Charles Champlin of the Los Angeles Times, the film was uninteresting, crowded, strident, and ugly. The Washington Post's Gary Arnold was even blunter. "Have never seen an uglier large-scale musical," he remarked, referring to it as being closer to the new tastelessness. Additionally, Newsweek's David Anson described it as merely mediocre, citing the broad humor. "The pace is slow and the drama is flat." However, he acknowledged one thing as well. Fortunately, John Travolta is not a flat person. You can't watch anyone else when he's on screen. These initial responses demonstrate the wide range of opinions individuals had on the film. While some found it sloppy and superficial, others found it revolutionary joy. However, time would show that the story was sustained by audiences rather than critics. And as the years went by, Grease was once again examined and reconsidered, with ideas evolving with time. Critics re-examined the movie years afterward. Roger Ebert gave it another review in 1998. He rated it 3 stars out of 4, describing it as a mediocre musical that was charming, lively, and plastic. He thought Travolta's Elvis-inspired performance was the high point. However, he also thought the film handled the content like a dumb piece of propaganda. Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian took a different tack in 2018, giving it 5 stars and stating that it's still a sugar rush movie. Fans contributed to the movie's reputation in addition to critics. Grease was chosen as the greatest musical ever by Channel 4 in their list of the 100 greatest musicals in 2004. Additionally, it came in at number 21 on Entertainment Weekly's list of the top 50 high school films. These rankings demonstrated that audiences saw Grease as one of the greatest, notwithstanding the opinions of critics. However, new arguments started to emerge as the years passed. The movie was no longer just seen as entertaining. People began to wonder if it had held up well over time and what its themes and message were. At that point, Grease transcended its status as a musical. It started to be discussed culturally. Furthermore, these discussions weren't always complimentary. Many viewers and reviewers have recently re-evaluated Grease from a contemporary perspective. According to some, the film had sentiments that, by today's standards, would be viewed as retrograde. Business Insider's Bryn Gelbart claimed that the movie had not held up over time and conveyed a regrettable message. Entertainment Weekly's Kristen Baldwin saw the conclusion as distinctly unfeminist. The Sydney Morning Herald's Katie Hall described the movie as both extremely controversial and, in a sense, ahead of its time. These differing opinions demonstrate how the movie still sparks debates decades after it was first released. However, Joe Hildebrand of news.com.au defended the film, claiming that it wasn't as bad as other critics had said. He maintained that because its characters are, well, just like people, they say and do terrible, disgusting things. In 2020, the arguments peaked. When the film was shown on the BBC, many complained, reigniting previous criticism. However, Olivia Newton-John addressed the situation in her own words. She reminded everyone that the movie wasn't intended to be taken so seriously and termed the comments ridiculous. Fans were brought back to the core of the issue by her remarks. After all, it was a light-hearted musical that made no pretense of being flawless. However, the ongoing discussions demonstrate that Grease has evolved beyond a sentimental film. It has evolved into a movie that provokes intergenerational dialogue on values, gender, and culture. Even though controversy dominated news reports, the film's backstage secrets captivated viewers for years to come. Fun facts about Grease. Despite the debate between reviewers and viewers on the film's significance, certain interesting facts about its production continued to astound viewers. For starters, the original stage musical did not even include many of the songs that became well known in the film. The Broadway version of Grease by Frankie Valli, Hopelessly Devoted to You, You're the One That I Want, and Summer Nights, Only Summer Nights were among the 4 songs that went on to become enormous Billboard hits. The last 3 were composed specifically for the movie. They became so popular that they were eventually included in later stage versions of Grease. Conversely, the film omitted a few songs from the original play. Songs like Freddie My Love, Those Magic Changes, and It's Raining on Prom Night were relegated to background music rather than major acts. Many of those songs were revived and put back into the spotlight in 2016 by Fox's Grease Live. There were other adjustments as well. The story was set in California instead of Chicago. And the Australian Sandy Olsen from the movie was modeled off Sandy Dombrowski from the stage play. The Burger Palace Boys group name was even altered to the T-Birds. These specifics serve as a reminder of how drastically the movie deviated from its stage origins. The cast is another interesting detail. Michael Biehn made his cinematic debut in Grease and went on to become well known for his parts in James Cameron's science fiction movies, such as The Terminator and Aliens. In the basketball sequence, he made an uncredited cameo as a Rydell student who was hit in the stomach. This small element is always surprising to sci-fi lovers. Unexpected decisions and odd coincidences. Movies in real life can occasionally have the most bizarre connections. While filming the sleepover scene in which Rizzo and the Pink Ladies sang Look at Me, I'm Sandra Dee, one of the most terrifying coincidences occurred. Stockard Channing looked to the picture of Elvis Presley on the wall and sang a line about him in jest at that point. Unfortunately, Elvis passed away on August 16, 1977, the day the scene was filmed. Even more unsettling is the fact that Frankie Avalon was cast in the film after Elvis declined an offer to play the teen angel. Greased Lightning, a song by Jeff Conaway's character Kaneki, was another behind-the-scenes twist in the theatrical performance. John Travolta persuaded the filmmakers to let Danny Zuko take over the song in the movie, even though it was intended to be his big moment. Naturally, Conaway was upset at losing the attention that had been on his character. In the latter moments, Sandy undergoes her well-known metamorphosis. In You're the One That I Want, Olivia Newton-John wore tight black trousers, but they weren't a costume. She owned these old pants from the 1950s. The crew practically had to stitch her into them after the zipper broke. Olivia's personal wardrobe was the only reason that last outfit became one of the most famous movie scenes ever. We were likewise surprised by the casting decisions. Henry Winkler, popularly known as the Fonz from Happy Days, was given the role of Danny Zuko before Travolta was cast in it. Winkler declined it, concerned that he would have to spend the remainder of his career playing greasers. In retrospect, it's difficult to see anyone else playing Danny, yet that one choice altered the course of film history. The scene in Frosty Palace where Sandy and Danny first meet comes next. It's no coincidence if you've ever noticed the hazy banner in the background. The Coca-Cola advertisement had to be blocked out since Paramount had a contract with Pepsi. The issue was that the blur was so noticeable that it nearly appeared to be an error. Fans still make fun of it now, pointing out that it's one of the most obvious changes in the movie. These specifics demonstrate how even seemingly insignificant choices and events influenced Grease. However, there were still more mysteries about the cast and the film's popularity that needed to be revealed. Magic at the box office and grown-up teenagers. The actual ages of several of the high school students in Grease are among its most hilarious statistics. Although casting adults as teenagers has long been popular in Hollywood, this film went beyond the norm. When John Travolta played Danny, he was 23 years old. Stockard Channing, who played Rizzo, was 33 years old, and Olivia Newton-John was 29. Cha-Cha Di Gregorio's actress, Annette Charles, was 30 years old. The only real teenager in the movie, Lorenzo Lamas, who played Sandy's jock boyfriend Tom, had no dialogue at all. The high school atmosphere felt exaggerated as a result, yet viewers still adored it. When there was so much excitement on screen, age didn't matter. Lastly, the fact that Grease became so profitable is among the most startling facts about it. By Hollywood standards, the movie had a very small budget, just a few $1 million. Nevertheless, it became one of the most profitable musicals ever produced. The total revenue from the film, adjusted for today's value, would exceed $700 million. That surpasses some of the most popular superhero movies of the current era. It's difficult to imagine a modestly funded musical with straightforward sets and memorable tunes competing with mega franchises. Grease, however, showed that it was feasible. Strange coincidences, unanticipated decisions, and enormous success combined to make the movie more than just a tale of high school romance. It turned to become a force for culture. And as more information becomes available, it becomes clearer why Grease is still regarded as one of the best musicals ever produced. The controversy around a classic. People have been familiar with the movie Grease for over 40 years. It has served as a wedding sing-along, a popular choice during school breaks, and an inspiration for party costumes. However, there have been contentious discussions about this same movie in recent years. In 2020, social media was ablaze with responses when the BBC broadcasted around Christmas. Viewers identified lyrics and scenes that seemed out of place in the modern world. Summer Nights, the opening number, was one of the most talked about parts. When Danny's pals inquire about Sandy, he responds, "Did she put up a fight?" That line provoked fresh criticism in the context of the #MeToo campaign. Another instance that was brought up as one that feels problematic right now is the drive-in scene in which Danny approaches Sandy. Smaller details, such as a boy peering down a girl's skirt while she sat on the bleachers, were also picked up on by several viewers. Others brought up the school dance scene, which prohibited same-sex couples from participating. The absence of racial diversity on screen is another factor. And the movie appeared drastically different to viewers of today. There were questions even at the conclusion. In an attempt to get Danny back, Sandy, the kind nice girl, abruptly alters her appearance and demeanor. It appeared to others that the message was that women should alter who they are in order to please men. One spectator summed it up on social media by writing, "I'm not offended by Grease, and I don't want it to be cancelled or banned. I shudder at the terrible situations I see when I see it now, though." These voices demonstrate how the same movie can be viewed differently by various generations. And when these arguments became more heated, the issue of whether the movie ought to be outlawed altogether came up. However, not everyone shared that viewpoint. Classic nostalgia or cancel culture. Media personalities also got in when discussions about racism and homophobia in Greece made news. Piers Morgan made fun of the argument on Good Morning Britain by tweeting, "Should Greece be barred for being homophobic/racist? The woke bloodthirsty fools who want it outlawed should be banned, so the answer is no." His remarks echoed the sentiments of many. Even people who were aware of the film's shortcomings did not think it should be taken down. "We know the very old shows and movies are shady, but it was a different time," one social media user clarified. "Fortunately, things have changed, but to outlaw everything. Although I can watch and I do cringe, it seems excessive to outright forbid it." A classic is Grease. Don't compare it, instead, view it as such. Grease is rapey, slut-shaming, and likely homophobic and weird, according to another, but it was produced at a time when these things weren't acceptable yet and were accepted. Even if it hasn't aged particularly well, it is still a classic of its era, which is why I continue to watch it. The division is evident in these responses. People acknowledge that the movie hasn't held up well over time. However, they contend that it belongs in the historical context and should be viewed as such. Another viewer adopted a more assertive stance, writing to people who believe Grease is racist, homophobic, etc. It is, indeed. But never watch a film made before 2010 if you can't comprehend what life was like in the 1970s. They continued by explaining that as society has changed, more diverse and powerful female characters can now be found in movies. But things were just different in the 1970s. Another user retaliated against Piers Morgan by stating that, despite Greece's unimaginable problems, no one is calling for its ban. Don't try to minimize the struggles of liberals. Thus, one fact persisted despite the back-and-forth disputes. The movie was still seen. They couldn't let it go, even though they laughed, rolled their eyes, and sang along. However, viewing it through contemporary eyes also entailed taking in elements that were previously disregarded or dismissed. These little incidents provided additional insight into the reasons behind the protracted debate around Grease. Scenes that are problematic from a modern perspective. Today, going back to Grease is frequently like viewing two movies at once. The film was full of romance, humor, and song for kids who grew up with it. The uncomfortable elements, however, are more noticeable to grown-ups now. The question of whether Sandy resisted Danny's advances in Grease Lightning is raised in Summer Nights. Kenickie boasts that girls will cream over his car, calling it a real pussy wagon. Previously dismissed as humor, these sentences now have a different meaning. Additionally, there are background scenes that highlight problematic habits. While his companions chuckle, one of the T-Birds lies beneath the bleachers to look up girls' skirts. In a different scene, Marty informs Rizzo that a man had tampered with her drink. This is a casually written scene, but by today's standards, it is concerning. Criticism is also leveled at the story's portrayal of women. In addition to Rizzo being criticized for being reactive and dealing with pregnancy rumors, Sandy is the blonde, naive ideal girl who needs to maintain her innocence. She is even referred to as sloppy seconds by Danny. It feels unpleasant to observe these double standards now, even though they represent the hardship women endured in that time period. Grease is problematic, according to one viewer, since it sends the idea that women should completely alter who they are and their personalities in order to be with the man they love. However, the film also featured Rizzo's stirring ballad, "There Are Worse Things I Could Do," in which she acknowledges her shortcomings while asserting her decisions. Her role was someone who enjoyed, which was uncommon for women in the 1970s, according to Stockard Channing's later explanation. Rizzo was real, bold, and complex for young ladies back then. Years later, Olivia Newton-John herself responded to criticism. "I am aware that there were some criticisms regarding my desire to emulate him," she stated. "It's a movie and it's a fun story and I've never taken that too seriously." Her words show that not everyone sees Sandy's transformation as negative. Stockard Channing even called Sandy's final look a moment of empowerment for women. These different perspectives prove why debates around Grease are not simple. Just when you think the film is outdated, it surprises you with moments that still feel modern. And it is exactly this clash of ideas that has kept people talking for so long. Why Grease still lasts. For all the criticism and uncomfortable moments, Grease has managed to last for more than 4 decades. It is filled with contradictions. One moment it feels old-fashioned, the next it feels ahead of its time. Some scenes make audiences cringe, others make them laugh or cheer. Viewers find themselves caught between two feelings, recognizing the flaws, and yet loving the music, the characters, and the nostalgia. As one article put it, Grease has somehow managed to last the distance not in spite of its dichotomies, but because of them. This helps explain why the movie still attracts millions of viewers. It doesn't make perfect sense, but maybe it doesn't have to. For example, you can watch the absurd scene of a car flying into the clouds and roll your eyes, but moments later you're singing, "Go Together" at the top of your lungs. The contradictions are part of its magic. Even in its flaws, it reflects real struggles of growing up. Identity, peer pressure, love, and acceptance. Rizzo faces shame and rumors, but still stands strong. Sandy changes herself, but gains confidence. Frenchie worries about her future, but keeps trying. And then there's Mrs. Murdoch, the female mechanic teacher who teaches the boys about cars. These details give the film layers that viewers still connect with today. That's why no matter how much debate surrounds it, Grease continues to be watched, quoted, and performed. As one viewer tweeted, "I'm gonna be right there singing all the songs, but still LOL." Another said, "Although it hasn't aged amazingly, it is still a classic of the time." And that is the story of Grease. A movie that can make you cringe 1 minute and sing the next. A film that refuses to fade away. And a classic that still sparks conversations more than 40 years later. Do you think Grease should still be celebrated as a classic? Or do its outdated themes make it harder to enjoy today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.